your and my dynamic, or my dynamic with dad, looking back on it now, would you describe it as healthy?
No.
And what would you say now was unhealthy about the dynamics?
This is the deep dive with Adam Roa.
I don't even really think people understand how outside of your comfort zone this is, Ma. So do you have anything you want to say to let them know so that they're aware?
It's like, oh my goodness, my heart is racing like crazy. I'm always in the background, so to speak, watching you, and now having to like divulge things to the world is like scary, but it's an edge and it's good.
Yeah, but it's been amazing for me. For people who don't know, the reason why I'm having my mother on here even is because I have been deeply inspired by you, Ma, because you have. I would say you found, I don't, is it a second wind or a third wind in terms of just what you are claiming for your life, and basically saying, okay, you've retired. And now, instead of just going into this is who I am and what I do and what I believe, you've actually started to question a lot of things and learn a lot of things. And you, in many ways, have become one of my students, literally by joining the Create community. And you're in my classes, you listen to my podcast. And that's so inspiring to me because, I get to see a lot of people whose parents aren't like that. Their parents are very much set in their ways. And I would love to start off just by asking you, what is it that has allowed you to really embrace rediscovering yourself at the age that you are unknown? We don't have to announce that on the podcast, but
hey, I have a birthday coming up.
Yeah, you do.
And I will be 69.
69. Yay.
Yeah.
Last
yeah.
year of your 60s. Yeah. It's almost your birthday, Ma. A couple days.
Almost. Yeah. Well, before children, I started my spiritual awakening journey and did a lot of things, and then raising kids and trying to do the stability thing. You got to be there for the kids, and everything went with structured religion, as you know, and we raised you Catholic and gave you the opportunity to choose whatever you wanted to do when you got old enough. And that was
forced your
important.
hand. I forced your hand a bit in that.
Yeah, you did. But it was there. I mean, even if that hadn't happened, at refusing to go on with the confirmation and stuff, I had it in my mind that you chose because of my upbringing and so forth, so that you could make your choices. Anyway, it just sort of went out of the wayside. I was still always a spiritual person, but I embraced Saint Francis of Assisi, and I became a person in that order, the SFO or something, order of the ordinary people, not a nurse, a nun or a priest or anything like that. So still on that journey and things. And then actually the thing that brought me away from the structured church was that from the pulpit, they told me that my son Dustin wasn't accepted because he was gay. And so with that, I couldn't live with the hypocrisy anymore. And so I left the church. And with that, started looking and searching, still am, whether I go to a church that's more accepting of everything and stuff or not, is for the future. Right now, it's not there. And just, I've been with COVID, one of the silver linings is that you create, and that helped me with my spiritual journey, awakening, continuing.
Have you found it hard to like, be a student of your son?
No, because I've been listening to your podcast for years and know how open you are and candid. And so I know people think that there's the shock factor and things, and I should be going, oh my goodness, but I've known you for so long that I understand that anything is possible with you. And that
Um,
is you.
and where was that? So for me, I've confided in you a bit about my recent breakup and how her parents didn't approve of me, and were not fans of how I live my life, and especially the openness with which I live my life. Do you do you have that? Like, do you feel like I shouldn't be sharing the way that I do, or do you feel, is it something that's, like, what is your thoughts on that?
Um, I think that you have impacted a lot of people with your honesty and your openness, and that's a good thing. Once in a while, I think there's something that you really go out there, like your Facebook and with the mirror,
Oh,
and
when I talked about masturbating into a mirror.
yeah, yeah, that one,
Yeah.
that one, got way out there a little bit, but I, so that was like, it wasn't so much that you did, it's like the repercussions that could have happened to, because I think Facebook actually contacted you or something. And so I'm thinking the repercussions of your actions versus it wasn't so much, oh my goodness, he shouldn't have done that. That wasn't the reaction.
So that you have almost like the motherly instinct of not wanting me to get hurt or get in trouble.
Of course. Of course.
And
Yes.
and do you feel like, for me, and for reference, for people who are just like, wait, what did they just said masturbating into a mirror? What, on Facebook? What happened? I posted because I was going through a period, and I have a lot of friends that are in the world of tantra and sexual energy and sexual healing. And one of the practices that is pretty regular and relatively normal in that world is to pleasure yourself while looking into a mirror. There's a lot of mirror work. It doesn't have to all be masturbation, but there is mirror work that you do, and one of those things that I had such resistance to was this very thing. And finally, when I went through my last breakup, I went, why don't I just try this? And it was remarkable, actually, what came up, how much healing was in that very action that I didn't know. And the post wasn't graphic at all. In fact, it only said the word once, and then it talked about what I learned. And I was wearing, I was shirtless, but I was wearing pants. Like, it wasn't a sexual photo even, but it triggered a lot.
Well, sensual.
It was just me standing in pants, shirtless, in front of a mirror. So, like, the idea that is sexual, like, if you just saw me hanging out with my friends, smiling at a pool party in swim trunks, I'm wearing less clothing in that. But it's because, you know what I mean? Like, it was, people project onto these photos whatever they want.
Right.
And so it's similar with the cover photo of my song Voices, where it's me sitting in my underwear on the edge of the bed. I got a ton of people that thought, why are you sexualizing your message? And I went, I'm battling depression in this photo. Like, it's not, I don't feel sexual at all. So people will project on that. And anyway, off that tangent, what I wanted to come back to was, I feel as if part of the reason why I share as openly as I do is because I felt so closed off and held back and repressed growing up. I felt like I couldn't really express my emotions safely in our house. I felt like I needed to keep it all bottled up inside for a variety of reasons, from, how dad was and the role model that he never showed emotion, to the ways in which emotion was handled in our household. And so I'm curious because, like, where do you think this part comes from? One of the things I'm most interested in talking to you about is trying to figure myself out a little bit. And I'm like, where do you think that has come from? Because it's not how I was raised. It's not the household that I grew up in. And yet the level at which I share super openly and vulnerably now, people might assume that that's kind of the relationship that we all had. And maybe you can speak to it. It really wasn't.
No, definitely not. I was always the super emotional one, and my codependence never helped, and always wanting things to be perfect, and then your dad emotionally unavailable, and the Asian culture and all that in there definitely isn't the you didn't behave the way you are now in the household and things. And so it's hard to say where this came from, other than the fact that, I don't know, maybe, as they say, that you came into this life on that particular day to this particular family for the reason that you're living it now and helping others heal.
Yeah. Well, do you feel, what was the reason? Would you describe, let's get real now. Would you describe our family, like your and my dynamic, or my dynamic with dad, looking back on it now, would you describe it as healthy?
No.
And what would you say now was unhealthy about the dynamics?
Well, you really couldn't be open in yourself. You even without the aspect of the sexual trauma, you didn't feel safe to express emotions because dad didn't want it, because in the Filipino culture, it's a weakness and you don't show that weakness. And that's the way he was raised. And then my codependence always going overboard to make up for that definitely was not healthy.
So going overboard to make up for that. One of the things, when I first started dating Azria, there were moments where when she would get super emotional, like when she would start crying or yelling, I would say, "Can you please leave the room until you've calmed down, and then come back and let's have this conversation." Literally, my girlfriend is crying and I'm saying, "You need to leave the room until you can have a like rational conversation here." And I would never do that now. I would never do that. And invalidate someone's feelings like this, or cause them to feel that unsafe. But the reason that was happening was because I legitimately couldn't handle it, because I never saw it. Right. I never saw dad like be with your emotions. And the only time you ever got really emotional like that was when you were angry. Like you and I would get into it. And so I'm curious, is there, like, how was it for you? Like, is that similar? Like what I just said about my initial relationship with Asvia and how I couldn't handle the emotion, is that similar to your and dad's dynamic? Was that something similar, or were you guys behind closed doors actually very emotional with each other?
I was emotional. Dad, even behind closed doors, wasn't, even to this day, is not overly emotional, but behind closed doors, we had plenty of conversations and I cried, and yeah, the emotions were there. It's just he it wasn't shown to you, that I found out that you didn't see us like hugging and kissing and being romantic and things. So
Well, I have a brother and a sister, so I know you guys had sex at least 3 times.
I know. I have to say this. He was in 5th grade. You were in 5th grade, and one of your friends, they probably were Mormon, and so they were having many kids. And the mother wanted me to tell you that they were going to have another baby. I don't know why she wanted me to tell you, but anyway, so this was like their, I don't know, 3rd or 5th child. I don't know what it was. And I remember you said they had sex again. So yeah, that's what you thought. Have sex, you have a baby. Have sex, have a baby. So I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, pretty typical too of that age.
And so do you feel like what was it about? I see so many similarities in myself to my father,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those, and this is something that I've spoken about on this podcast a lot, which is in the personal development world, we often highlight all of the shit of how our parents kind of screwed us up. Right. And there's Preston and Lexi, friends of mine who've been on this podcast, say all the time, like, you're going to screw your kids up. That is just part of it. And that's what needs to happen. And no matter what you do. And I'm curious from your perspective, because I see a lot of what I've learned how to do and a lot of the things I'm most proud of in terms of opening my heart, the way in which I love, the way in which I show my affection to women that I'm with and dating, and to my friends, and all, like, I feel like I've almost had to unlearn a lot of what I learned from dad, specifically as a male role model, in order to do that. And I'm curious for you, in the, like, when it comes to affection and the ways of showing affection, was that a conversation? Like, was that a conversation that you and dad talked about? Did you ever think about the ways in which your kids would be reading your guys's public displays of affection or lack thereof as their kind of like reference point? Does it cross your mind how your acting is impacting us in our worldview?
In that time frame, no. It did not cross my mind at all. Just busy raising 3 children close together in age. And dad would go off to work, and I was the caregiver and taking you here, there. So it's just so wrapped up in everything. And as being codependent, building that wall and shutting my emotions down to survive, it never crossed my mind. Now I look back and I see the outward display that dad and I showed you guys is exactly what I grew up with. And he probably grew up with the same thing as well. My parents, I don't recall them showing affection in front of me.
Did you feel it with your mom and dad? Like, did you feel like a depth of love was there, or did you feel like for example, as we're having this like very real conversation, and I'm so appreciative of you, Ma. I know that like this is yeah, I just love you so much. And one of the things that I think about is I see in what I learned from you and dad more than anything was like a commitment and a loyalty, and putting family first. That there's a lot of that I deeply admire and respect and appreciate. And there's a part of me that goes, in my relationships, I almost overcompensate for how much affection I show now. Like you've seen me bring some girls around, and it's just like, I want to be incredibly affectionate. I want that very public display of love. And I think in large part because I didn't see it I didn't see it growing up. And I'm curious, um, for you, it sounds like you wound up in a marriage that actually you both did that was very similar to what your parents exemplified. And was that conscious? Like, was that, do you think about that now? Was it just kind of how it ended up? And what are your thoughts around that?
As far as what being conscious.
Like, was that you had your mom and dad exemplify, okay, we don't really show affection. So was that part of
Oh,
what
no,
you
no,
were drawn to,
no,
or
no. Um, yeah, there's a side of dad you probably have never seen. um, when we were dating, very affectionate outwardly, and not overly, but holding hands and arm around my shoulder, and you know, not so much kissing in public, but and things. But yeah, it was there, and then getting caught up. Um, as you know, dad is a worrier, and so he internalizes, and so I think he felt that huge responsibility of raising these children.
Hmm.
And so he doesn't verbalize his concerns as much. And so I've learned over the years to draw it out of him. But again, all those conversations were behind closed doors. It wasn't in front of children.
So do you
And
go
and
ahead?
going back with my parents, I'm sure the same thing was true, that I don't remember them having like conversations, or having, how they talk about families have powwows or whatever around the kitchen table, and they discuss stuff and things. My parents didn't do that, and in with that role model in mind, and I'm sure dad's didn't either. Coming from the Philippines, um, you do what you were told, and so that's sort of the way our role models were, and that's what we picked up on.
Were there things that you did in your marriage, and in raising kids that were intentionally different than what you experienced? Like, were there things that you said,
Oh yeah,
okay, I
yes,
experienced this and I'm going to do something very different?
yes,
Like what?
yes. Um, my parents were older. My mom was 41 when she had me, and my brother is 10 years older than I am. And so um, by the my parents did not go to my events, anything I was involved in. Basically, I'm sure they did when I was like more in elementary school, and I do have some memories and stuff, but it was, they did not want to be at my events, or it appeared that way. They were tired, they'd worked all day and so forth. And so I made a commitment that, I would be home raising children and being in their life. And I did that pretty much through elementary school years. And then I went back to work. But so, going to your soccer practices, your soccer games, your uh, baseball practices and games, and for all three of you, and everything I said, I would be there. And so pretty much that was my life, of going to everything of my children.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one conscious thing that I did do, to be more involved, because that's to me it. But your dad, we had a conversation one time, and it's always stuck with me, um, that he told me, just because I don't love the kids the way you do doesn't mean I don't love them. And so the fact that he really didn't want to go to the soccer games, or the different things, it didn't mean he didn't love you. And so I had to understand that we all love differently.
Well, it's an interesting thing, right? As I've learned about love languages and various aspects of this, um, it's a two-way street, right? There, we love differently, but there's also that aspect of understanding how someone receives love and speaking their language, right? And
Yes.
um, I have a brother and a sister, and I imagine, and I know that we're all very different. We are all very different, and so um, how how was it to try and keep this concise? Like, how was it with me specifically? Because I feel it like you and I fought. We fought a lot. There
We
was a
did.
lot. We fought a
Oh
lot,
yeah.
which
Yes,
is
we
crazy to
did.
think about. When people see us interact now, it's I think they'd be surprised at how much we like
Oh,
yelled at each other. And um I I have sat in ayahuasca ceremonies. I have done so many meditations and work. Even I'm doing work now of really wanting to understand. I know how much you specifically. I know how much you were trying to love me, like trying to love me and trying to create um, scenarios where we could talk, and have me open up emotionally and that sort of thing. And I want to hear from you. Was there Are you aware of why, like, did it change at a certain point? Like, what caused us to have so much conflict um growing up?
well, it started when you were about 2.5. When I was pregnant with Brian and I started a show, and you realized that even less time is going to be spent with you. And we really went around when you were 2.5, we really started butting heads at that age for you. And so just eh, it, and you were so strong-willed and intelligent, um, that it was a challenge trying to parent you.
That's a polite way
Yeah. I
saying I was a
mean,
little shit.
you're but an intelligent one. Your dad and I went to plenty of counseling sessions to work through parenting, and and the insights and things that we would get to to parent, and especially, um, I I would think people would understand that, all three of you gifted, but you're you assimilate so much quicker than a lot of people, and that's part of why I feel I'm a student of yours, because I don't assimilate anywhere near as fast, and even when I was younger, I didn't assimilate as fast as you do, and things, and how you catch on to things, and you are very similar to dad, that you can um, observe things and really understand them, where it's me, I'm in there emotionally, and all that, and so I get caught up in that. Just like I remember when you and Azri would come over, and I'd be watching some movie, and they go, the acting is so bad. How in the world can you be watching that movie? And I'm going like, but it's a good story. I just like it. And you were like, oh no, can't handle that. I can't even stand be in the same room as this movie and stuff. Yeah. So those kinds of things, I was always, still am. I get caught up in the emotion of the thing, and have a harder time standing back and being, objective. Dad is the opposite. He is very objective and less emotion. And I think that's how our relationship has worked.
Well, it's interesting because often in personal development we talk about how our greatest shadows are also our greatest gifts, right? And for myself, I developed this ability to shut my emotions down. I developed an ability because out of fear, essentially, of it's not safe to be emotional here. It's not safe for me to show how I'm really feeling. Um, I shut them down, and now there's a lot of great benefit to that. Where I can be in a coaching session with someone, or I could be in my own process of whatever, and have this almost strange. Asra used to get really scared. She said I like turned into a robot. The scary side of it, where I could remove my emotions and kind of set them aside, and they're still happening, but observe them almost like out of body, which would allow me to see things objectively and rationally. And so even in the height of an argument or freaking out or whatever, my rational brain, I always had access to it. And that's what allowed me, I feel like, to to be honest with you, it's what's also allowed me to grow as fast as I've grown over the last several years, dealing with some intense things like sexual abuse and various stuff, because I can go, okay, let me remove my emotions from here, so I can observe, and then, okay, let me like access the emotions again. And it was actually, it was acting that I feel like saved my life, because before I learned how to re-access the emotions, all I was ever doing was shutting them down. And it was acting where I had to learn, how do I get angry? How do I get sad? How do I get jealous? Like, how do I access these emotions? And I had to almost learn them very logically and practically, how to access those things. And I went back years, maybe a year ago, I went back and I found my online like journal and blog that I had kept. And something that really surprised me, because I didn't remember this about myself, was how much pain I had at like 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. There was so much pain that I was writing about back then. Did you ever, did you feel that in me? Because when I think back to that age in college, I remember it quite fondly, my friends and all these things. And yet when I go back and read the writings and the journal entries and stuff, I go, wow, I was really unhappy. I was really angry. I was really hurt. And I'm curious, as a mother, did you feel that in me? Was I always that way? Did I always battle deep sadness?
I don't know about deep sadness, but sadness, and I felt your anger, and I think you channeled it into sports and always competing and the need to be the best at what you did, and being in the limelight and things. And I think that part of that was so that you did not have to confront your feelings. If you're always out there and on display and doing different things, then you don't have to be by yourself and really think about that stuff. And so that's what I felt, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, I'll share openly here. There were several different times in my life that I went to therapy, right? That you went to family therapy, and then I remember there were times we went to family therapy, and then it was the counselor saying, "Hey, I think Adam could use some just on his own." And what's funny is I'm in a chapter right now where there's a lot of anger that's coming up. I'm out here in this cabin and I'm reading through these journals, and there's a lot of anger coming up. And in the last 10 days specifically, I've entered into this space where I'm feeling a lot of anger around things that I didn't even realize I had anger around, because I've almost become accustomed to being sad. And so sadness, I can go, oh, okay, this is normal. But anger is not something that I've really allowed myself to consciously feel. And I think that's why it was under the surface. And so as I'm having this anger come up, I'm freaking out more than when I've been sad. And I'm curious why you think that is. Because you said you felt my anger, but from my perspective, I've said to my friends, like, anger is not something that I really feel often. It's not one of my primary emotions. And I'm curious where that anger, can you spot maybe where that anger was coming from? I know you said at 2.5, there was some of that, but I guess I'm looking at these patterns and speaking to you about it around if there were moments of growing up or events that you could spot where you go, like, this was a turning point where I felt you shift somehow.
I don't, at the top of my head, I don't have any specific moments. I just know there are times when you would get really angry, but it came out like in a meanness to your brother and your sister. And a big brother syndrome type thing, and just, I'm older than you and you have to do what I tell you to do and so forth. That's where I saw what I felt was angry things coming up.
Yeah, I think one of the pieces that has come up for me around it a lot is, and I've spoken about this on this podcast, so it's not surprising, is also being disciplined physically, right? Like being hit with belts and wooden paddles and things like that. And the what it does to the psyche from one, not feeling physically safe in your own home, and two, I think the anger, right? Like this is supposed to be my protectors more than anyone else, and like if they can hit me, then like what does that say about me? And that's been a big thing that I've worked through over the years. And were you raised that way, or is that from dad specifically?
I did get spankings. I believe it was probably my mom. I don't remember my dad. I specifically remember a time that I was getting spanked and it hurt. And I turned around and I said, "Are you using a spoon or something on me? That really hurts." Yeah. And she wasn't, it was her hand. But I can see that now, that it would be when you're spanked, it's because your parent is angry with you, and it's probably anger being transferred to you.
Yeah, I definitely think that. And was it ever a question for you? Like, was it a conversation behind closed doors of should we hit our kids or not, or it was just normal?
And again, I you may find this hard to believe, I did not know that that was going on.
That I was being hit. Really?
Really.
What's up, deep divers? Hope you're enjoying the episode. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know about my new nonprofit, Surrendered Artist. This is a charity organization that I have founded because I want to teach people the power of art as a technology to shift human consciousness. I've spoken about it a lot on this podcast, and now there's an actual organization that is dedicated to spreading this information. It is also aiming to empower artists with tools to shift out of the starving artist archetype and into a surrendered artist archetype. One of those tools is my 4-step creative process called Unlock Your Inner Artist. We have a free gift for you. If you go to surrenderedartist.org/programs, or if you check out the link in the show notes, you will be able to receive a free multi-page PDF describing this process so that you can go and unlock your inner artist today. For how long? Until when?
Till, I don't know. It really, I did not know that when, and that was only when like I left, like when Dad would come home and we would have dinner, everything, and then I'd want some me time, and I would leave and I would go to the library actually, and I would get books and magazines and I'd sit and read. And I believe that's when that, or if I had to do something on the weekend or something, but I do not have memory of him disciplining you when I was there.
Interesting. That's interesting to me. Like you said, hard to believe, because it's such a prominent part of what I remember about my upbringing.
Mm-hmm. I
And
know.
so, yeah, I mean, you've heard me talk about it. It has shaped me in a lot of ways. And so once it came to light, like I do remember, I think it's when we lived in Cyprus, and Dustin and Brittany were younger, so I don't think they really remember. But I remember going to a therapy session with us and you, and the counselor asking, how we are being disciplined. And I do remember how it was an issue. It was the counselor was like, this is not okay. And so when that happened, and it was at the point of the counselor being like, this on the verge of reporting it, right? Like that level. I'd love to hear from you. Like what was your experience? We've never talked about that. What was your experience of having that reflection from an outside source about how you and Dad were kind of raising your kids?
It was the three of you in the room. I was not in the room. And then she called me back in and said that she did not, that I recall, actually tell me what was going on, but she did tell me that the way Dad was behaving wasn't correct, and he needed to do some additional counseling on his own. And so it scared me. And so went home, talked with him, and he did go to the classes that were required for, or request, whatever they, I forget how we found them, but yeah, what she told that she wanted him to do. And then I reported back to her.
Mm. And so when talking about all of this stuff now, one, for me, it's so beautiful that you and I can have this conversation. Like, I hope that people who are listening to this just recognize that it's never too late to develop the type of relationship between mother and son, or daughter, or whatever, that we can, because where we are now, if people see us and see us interact, it's so different than where we were when I was younger. I guess I would love to hear from you. Looking back on it now, because I'm now at a stage where I am actively aware of how much I'm looking forward to starting a family of my own. And over the next couple years, and I may not have said this to you actually, like my last relationship and the breakup really brought me present to what my priorities are in life, and realizing that my career and what I do is so much less important to me than my family, like so much more less important to me than having that love and having kids. And like I could do so many different things. I'm unattached to what it looks like, as long as there's that piece. And um, I would want to hear from you around if you could go back and do any of these things differently, based on how much you know now. And I know there's the answer of you wouldn't do anything differently because now look at where we are. But with the awareness that you have, knowing that awareness gives us choice, what sorts of advise me a little bit, what would, or anyone listening, what would the pieces of, what would you do differently about those early stages that may have allowed us to have this sort of relationship sooner?
Well, to backtrack just a little, I know I said like I, I when I was up until um, Bria started her journey of recovery from alcoholism and so forth, I had no idea what codependence was. So I had no idea that I was codependent. I just thought I was loving my children and taking care of everything. I knew I wanted things to be perfect, and those kinds of things. So if I could do anything, I would want the awareness that I needed to heal myself to be able to parent better.
Mm. And but you and Dad introduced me to personal development. That's one of the things
Yeah,
that
that is
that
true.
I am so grateful for, is that the two of you introduced me to the world of personal development at a young age. It was primarily around business and like money
Mhm,
and
mhm,
being able
mhm.
to like achieve as an entrepreneur or whatever I wanted to do. And but at least I knew that there was this world of reading books and like changing your mentality and learning how to motivate yourself. I was exposed to that, and for a lot of people, they don't even know that world exists. Um, and and so I'm so grateful for that. Did you stop at a certain point because you developed that awareness later? um, and I'm curious if you kind of put your own growth on pause in a certain way, as you were going along. Did it stop, or did it just never come up?
I probably put it on the back burner and uh, raising children, um, and then getting back into working full time and being a teacher. That is an emotionally draining profession as well. And so by the time I got home, just emotionally drained, and again, looking back, that taking a half hour for myself to be right with the world again, that's again something I would do over. So yes, to answer your question, yes, I stopped. In essence, I read books, I continued, but I don't think I did much besides reading the books. I didn't do the internal work.
And that's something that I would say that you've completely shifted. Like you're doing a lot of internal work now.
Yes,
What's brought about that shift for you?
retirement,
Mm,
and and I I'm not striving to. I don't have to prove myself like at work, always on edge, because a parent could call and say, "What are you doing to my child? Why did you reprimand him or this?" Or, always thinking, because parents, I will say this, parents who are upset call the principal, not the ones that, "Hey, you're doing a great job," those kinds of things. So you're I was always on edge thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do something wrong," or not that I wasn't. I've always felt I was an exceptional teacher. I have a lot of reference with that, as far as parents telling me and having students come back and seeing me and those kinds of things. But I've always been that one, that goody two shoes, and I want to toe the line and I want to do the right thing and I don't want to get in trouble. And I had some incidents with a previous principal before my last one that really um, took me down the rabbit hole and I had to crawl out of it. And so those kinds of things stopped my growth. And looking back now, that's the time that I should have been seeking the growth. And so I guess that's why I follow you, so to speak. I learn from you because you put that as the number one priority. And I've learned from that.
Mm. Well, thank you. I think that it started for me as it's been interesting for me because I have. Do you remember when I was in college and I came to you and said I needed help and I needed a therapist because I was having insomnia and there was
Mhm.
something wrong and I couldn't sleep and I didn't know what was happening. I look back at that now and I can there's like a familiar energetic thread, which is this depression that I recognize now that I struggled with like for years, for most of my life. And when I understand that there was a repressed memory of sexual abuse under the surface, that's a huge piece that was definitely impacting me and all of the other things that we've talked about here. And I feel as if um, I've just been searching my whole life for an ease to that, like that constant nagging. And for anyone who's dealt with depression or mental health issues, I imagine you can relate to this, where it's just this constant cloud, and this feeling like it could rain at any moment. And it's just always there. And so I think it started for me as let me overachieve, let me be the absolute best because it seems like people love me when I do that and I get acknowledgement and recognition and all of this stuff. And then once I started achieving all of these things and doing really, really well, I hit the point where I'm like, well, that's not making me happy. Now what? Right. And said, well, let me pursue my dreams. Let me pursue my heart. And that led to, moving to LA to pursue acting and following my heart in that way. Um, and then, yeah, get on TV a few times and go, wait, that's not doing anything for me either. And so there's been this kind of seeking constantly. And I think a lot of it has been driven by, I've just wanted to be happy. I've just wanted to not feel that kind of constant nagging thing. And uh, what's interesting is mental health. You've spoken about alcoholism in our family. You spoke about your codependency. There's some anxiety stuff that existed. I've spoken openly about depression. Um, I I remember. I feel like there is a a presence of kind of mental and emotional health issues in our family. And
Mhm.
I'm curious if you feel like that's nature or nurture. Have you reflected on whether you feel like that's the environment that we were raised in, or if you feel like we just came in with it? If you've done any thoughts around that.
I believe mental health is nature. But I think environment can help or hurt the mental state. And so it hopefully that answers that. I believe truly it's nature first, but then I think nurture plays into it with how the environment is that you are in.
Mhm. And so looking back at the environment that we were in, um, and looking forward to the environment that we're creating now, right? Like you and I talk on the phone more than we ever talked in our lives now, and especially if you include the create community and being able to interact through that and the podcast and stuff. What do you think has led to the greatest shift in our dynamic? Why do you think we now have this relationship versus, because I really want to hammer home that we were at each other's throats growing up. And I did not, I try, this, I tried to spend as much time away from home as I basically could. Moved out as soon as I could. We got into arguments because I would spend the night at my girlfriend's house during high school, and you were not happy about that. But like I tried to stay away from home. And now we have a relationship that I think other people actually envy. I think other people look at it as something that they want with their kids or their parents. And what do you think has been the greatest shift in that? What allows us to have this now?
I'm gonna say that a common goal, so to speak, one where we're both trying to help the planet in our own way. And so we have, as Blue says, that golden thread that binds us. I think a mutual appreciation for that. I'm proud of you and what you've accomplished, and also the personal growth that I've seen in the last 5 or so years, and that you have changed tremendously from the person that we used to butt heads with. And I would think that I have changed and I am not that person that I was when we were butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
So personal growth.
And so
personal development.
Another reminder for people to never stop. Don't stop that. Keep that going. And so as one of the biggest themes that I've been sitting with here as I reread old journals and stuff, there's a lot around relationships and obviously going through a breakup recently. And one of the things I was most excited to talk to you about here was seeing these threads of I used to say, and I've said it to you, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to find someone as loving as my mom. Like I want, and this I used to say this in a maybe less tactful way, but I remember I was taking a women's studies class in college, and it was taught by a woman who was a lesbian and kind of, anti-male is stereotype, but it was what it was. And she asked the question in class one time. She said, who out of the men here, and there was only like 6 of us out of this 60 something person class, how many of you want your your partner, the woman that you're with, to do the cooking and the cleaning and taking care of the house. And I think, the only guy that actually raised my hand in this class, and she started to go in on on me for this, being sexist and all of these things. But what I responded with was, no, no, no. What would be sexist is by assuming or projecting that all women need to do that. That would be sexist. From my perspective, what I'm viewing this is that I grew up with a mother that took care of the house. I grew up with a mother that made meals and that drove me to practice and picked me up from things, and who I saw take care of the house. So I had a female role model who showed love in this way. And so it's a part of what I want. It's a part of how I receive love. And if you're not that person, that's great. We don't have to date. I don't have to date a woman that does not like to cook or take care of the house. Like, I don't have to date anyone like that. I'm never going to force someone to be that. And yet, you exemplified ways of being for me that have set a very high standard in a lot of areas that I now consider to be very, very important to me. And you have seen me in a couple relationships over the years, and these breakups and that sort of thing. And I'm curious if you want to speak it openly here. What I want to know what you've seen. Like, I want to know what your hope is for me from who I date, who I wind up with, who would you partner me with? Because I know with my last partner, for example, I knew ahead of time how much you were going to like her because of how similar she is to you in so many ways. And I also knew the previous partner, how much it wasn't what you're used to, or you know what I mean? Like, I kind of know that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know me really well. And I'd love to hear from you as I'm designing and really sitting with the type of partnership that I want, what you observe, who would you put me with?
Well, first and foremost, my my wish, my dream for my children, and you in particular, it, it, on this podcast, is that I want you to find someone who makes you happy. Okay, first and foremost. I know the person has to be confident and secure in their own skin, their own relationship, because they need to be able to stand up to you. And also someone that can bring the soft side of you out, so that you aren't always so intense. I mean, you admitted that people tell you got to slow yourself down. You have to, your brain, like when you come and visit, it's like, hi, Adam, are you here? Can we go spend some time doing this? Because your mind you're so focused on what you're doing that sometimes you forget. And the last time you were here, it was more of a balance where you did your work, but you also took time to enjoy being with the people that you were with and things. And so, again, someone who is strong, loving, can see the good in everything. It has a good attitude, has a positive attitude, so that and can easily go with the flow and uncertainty. because that's definitely you. It's
I'm
like
I'm just
you
I'm
don't
starting,
you don't you're not a planner. You
which
go
is
with the
so, but
flow.
I used to be. I used to be.
Yes,
I
yes,
because I didn't feel safe. So I
right.
needed to create the plan, which I got from you.
Yes,
You're that way.
yes, and I'm trying to be more like you and going with the flow and being okay with the uncertainty.
How's that going?
It's better. It is better. It is better. But
Do you feel like when it comes to uh when it comes to parenting and um do you, what has shifted primarily for you when you relate to your children now versus growing up? Like I want to get into just like, how do you relate to being a parent now? What is the role that you see that you play currently? Because you're still my mom. You know,
that is true.
you're still my mom. I still love you. I still want to make you happy and make you proud and all of those things. So what how do you now view parenting at this stage where I'm a grown ass man sharing all of my secrets out on the internet?
Um, I see it more. You know, my love language is quality time. So just uh, I see it more like being equals, so that we can just have good conversations about stuff and just spending time together. That's my goal. I don't think. I mean, I'm. Let's put it the right way. I know I have knowledge and wisdom because of my age and what I've been through, that I can still give to you and your brother and your sister, but I don't think it's my role anymore to be telling you what to do. I think just having conversations, how are things going, what do you think, and if you want advice, you ask for it. So almost it's just a nice adult to adult relationship and enjoy time together.
Do you think that that is the result of, like, I think about people I know who um, are still intimidated by their parents, are still afraid to speak their truth to their parents, are afraid to stand up to their parents, are um, uh, like hide away parts of themselves from their parents. And it's pretty much exact opposite with me and the whole world, but with you guys. Like you asked me, what am I going to do for my birthday? And I said, I'll probably end up doing some plant medicine by myself and just go into ceremony. Like I'm very open with you around all of that. And having, as we start to wrap this up here, looking back at this conversation and realizing that that's as far from what we were as we could be. I stayed away. I kept everything a secret. I didn't want to share, no matter how hard you tried to get me to share all of those things. Is there a, do you think that happened? Did you have to let go? Like, was it you letting go of
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you think
yeah,
opened
yeah,
that up more than anything?
yeah, yeah. When you started really the profound changes in your spiritual awakening and things, and you chose not to be home for holidays, I'm going to cry. At first was really heart-wrenching, but I realized that it had to happen so that we would see you as you are now, not as what you were. And so, yes, I had to let go. And just there's something came to my mind that I wanted to speak. Um, like we openly, and you say it, and I say it on the Create and so forth. I love you and things. You guys were already born, and I had never remembered having my parents tell me they loved me. I mean, I knew it here, but it was not really here and things. And they did it, they showed their love in various ways. But anyway, when I was probably 40 or something, 45, I made it a point that when I visited my parents, that I would tell them that I loved them. And that was extremely hard because that wasn't the relationship that we had. And they said they loved me back, but even phone calls or anything, it didn't end with, I love you. It was just, bye, I'll talk to you next time or whatever. That's not the relationship that we have. And so maybe that was a point, that was a conscious effort that I knew I wanted to change things. And so that was something that I made certain that I tell my children I love them, or I send them a bedtime song.
Yeah. Or emojis. You send
Yeah.
heart emojis or kiss emojis. Okay, we'll start to wrap up here. I'm going to have a few kind of more rapid fire questions,
Okay.
Mom. And thank you for sharing all that you have. I want to kind of bring this into a synthesis because we've gone all over the place. You know, I didn't have a plan for this conversation, and some of the biggest takeaways. And let's try and like bring some real heat value here of what we've been talking about. Is one, it's never too late to shift. One, yourself, and two, as a result, your relationships. And what I have heard at several occasions, though, is that it requires intention. It requires intentionally letting go. Like when you speak to how hard it was when I decided I'm just not going to come home for the holidays anymore. While that was obviously painful for you and brings up emotion even now to think about, for me, I was very aware that every time I was coming home, I was being seen and spoken to like an old version of me and a version of me that I didn't like. And so it was like entering into a space where everyone looks at me for who I was instead of who I am right now. And it was such a tender time where I didn't, I hadn't yet built the confidence of who I was after my spiritual awakening. I was like wet cement, and I didn't feel strong enough to be around people who made me feel this other way until I got to a point where I went, oh, now it doesn't really matter how they see me. I know and feel confident in who I am. And now I can re-enter into this dynamic. And then it became important for me to, like, if you remember inviting you guys out to California to come stay with us for a while. And like all of those things became incredibly important because now I wanted to put intentional time in for you to see the new me. Once I'd gotten to that place where I could feel confident in who I was, is like, okay, now I want us to have new memories. I want you to have new conversations. So when you think about me, you don't just think about 17-year-old me. You think about 32-year-old me who's more loving and more open-hearted and that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of intention that has gone in on both of our sides to creating the relationship that we now have. And something else that I feel like I've taken away from this conversation is in recognizing, at least on what you've shared with me about raising us, how little thought went into some of the things that ended up having such huge impact, right? Like you were just doing what was felt like the thing to do. And only in hindsight are you going, oh, wow, like, of course, that's how it impacted and different things. And the opportunity and invitation for people listening to this to bring even more intentionality and awareness to, everything that they're doing in the moment. because that's what I'm gaining from this. And what I hope to really integrate is, even when I have kids, like, okay, can I be that much more aware and intentional about how I'm doing things, why I'm doing things, thinking about the impact it may be having long term, or that sort of stuff. Yeah, all of those are some of my biggest takeaways. I'm curious if you want to share any of your bigger kind of takeaways from this conversation, if you have any.
Um, just the one thing, like when you chose not to come home for holidays, and I was working through that, it has made me, what was also around the time that I discovered that I was codependent, and I started working to and going to coda meetings and different things and working on myself, and realizing that same thing, it is me in the long run who is important, the most important being to myself. And it doesn't matter whether you come home for the holidays or not, has nothing to do whether you love me or not. It's no reflection on that. It is just the way life is. And that's what gave me the strength to just be okay with myself and where I am. And so that I didn't depend on other people or outside sources to make me happy.
Are you saying it all comes back to self-love, Ma? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes. Yes.
Of
Yes.
course.
Yes.
Of course. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I want to really acknowledge you. I want to say how much I appreciate that you did, there are parents out there that when they feel hurt, or when they feel angry, or when they feel their own experience, they project out onto their kids. They make their kids feel bad. They guilt their kids, they blame their kids, they shame their kids. And you never did that. You never did that. And so I want to say thank you for not doing that, and for exemplifying that for us. I think that you have taken radical responsibility for, like, your own way of showing up in as a parent, and that's been amazing for me to witness. And I think, also, I took for granted the the parents that I had. It might be a very normal thing, but as I've gotten older and gotten to, work with a lot of clients and people in the create community, and dated people, and gotten to see their relationships with their parents, and the way that their parents treat them, or the way that their parents show up, or um, all of those sorts of things. It's given me, so, even though I might speak openly about also the ways in which I've had to work through stuff, I want everyone to hear, like, I've gained such gratitude for how you and Dad have shown up, and really what both of you have provided for me. Obviously, to be here today is a testament to you guys. And so thank you, and thank you again for showing that by even being willing to come on here and have this conversation. I hope it's been valuable for people, and I want to leave people with a couple little fun little tidbits here, so you can answer these whatever first comes up kind of intuitively, because I want to give some people behind the scenes that only they could get about Adam Rowe, only his mom can give. And I would love to hear from you. What what has been the most challenging part of raising me?
Staying ahead of your intelligence when you were younger, so I could still look like I was the parent. So I looked like I knew what I was doing.
Got it. I didn't. Always had a problem with authority, and my problem with authority had to do with people. I felt like adults just thought that they were smarter than you just because they were adults, and that you were supposed to listen to them just because they were adults.
Yes, but also I don't know if it's your generation might be like the first one that's really the questioning generation, where ours were you're told to do this, so you just did it. So that's what it was like, to be able to still parent you when you were questioning that parenting.
And what would you say was the most enjoyable part of parenting me?
Getting all the little gifts, like the poems that you wrote me, and the anthology of poems, and all those little things,
Hmm.
and spending time and watching you grow.
Hmm. What would you say is my greatest strength?
Observing and being able to see the energetics.
You're saying I'm a wizard? That's my greatest strength.
Yes.
And what would you say is my greatest weakness or area for improvement? Think pitfall to look out for.
Patience and tolerance.
Hmm. Is that an old version of me, or is that my current me?
Both.
Okay. If you had one
Let me clarify. Tolerance. You are very tolerant and giving of acceptance of love, but also tolerance of allowing. This one has been one of your weaknesses, is that people who don't catch on or assimilate as quickly as you don't have the patience to wait for them to catch up with you. You want them to be where you're at, in seeing everything at the same time, rather than being patient and allowing them to learn and grow up to where you are.
What is the thing you are most proud of me for?
Your personal growth and how you've taken trauma and turned it into a positive.
What is the single biggest fear that you have for me?
That you do something crazy and get hurt.
What if you could have one wish for me, and something that you hope and that you pray for me, what would that be?
To find your special person.
Out of curiosity, having met my last like 3 special people, did you think that I had? Like, I was with Azria for almost 10 years. Like, did you assume that that's who I was going to be with for the rest of my life? Like, or have you, every time you've met, from Azria to everyone else, just going, they're
Now
not?
I don't want to get in trouble with anybody out there of the last 3, but
Like
I
a mother's
mean,
intuition. Did you go, this is her? Or have you consistently, because obviously they didn't work out in that way. And so I'm curious if you kind of knew that they weren't the thing from just a motherly perspective.
I may, I feel on the fence here of like someone's going to have their feelings hurt. So I really, but I think some of the relationships, I mean, you and Ashery were talking about having children. So, that was, you were together for 10 years and things. So I felt that was where that was going. So when the uncoupling happened, that was quite the shock,
Mhm.
so I can't say, but a lot of personal growth when you were with her
Mhm.
and things. And so, and each relationship, you've had personal growth
Yep.
and learning what you don't want and maybe something that you do want. And so I think it helps you define closer and you discern a little bit more before getting into your next relationship, I'm sure will happen.
Yeah, there's definitely that aspect. Um, can you, if you could, what did you think I was gonna be when I was growing up?
As a child, I thought you were going to be a criminal lawyer
A criminal lawyer. Okay.
because you could always debate with the best of them and usually won.
And, do you have any, questions for me? You wanna do any rapid fire for me while you have
Mhm.
the microphone? If there's anything you'd like to ask me, before we wrap up here.
What do you see as your next chapter?
That's a great question, Mossy. You should host your own podcast. Um, and I think
I've listened to enough of them.
my next chapter is I my default is not even by choice. Like I don't believe that I've rushed into any relationships. I don't believe that like I've followed my heart, and what that's led to is being mostly in relationship for the last 12, 13 years, not being single. And what that also leads to is meaning that my happiest moments of the last 12, 13 years, like that, the happiest moments of my life, basically, have all come while I've been in relationship. And that is, I think it's important for me to have some really amazing, happy memories that are completely without a relationship. I want to develop a foundation of, oh yeah, some of my happiest memories are when I was just completely single, just on my own, and didn't need it. And um, that feels like a really important chapter. And also, um, the chapter after that, I'm ready for my queen. I'm ready for that person, and I've made a commitment that I will not get into a relationship again with anyone unless I believe that this is the person that I can see myself having children with, and doing that. Because I mean, I'm 36 now. I'm like, I want to have kids. I'd like to date someone for a couple. If I could choose, I'd like to date someone for a couple years, and then have children before the age of 40 or around 39, 40 or whatever. And I uh and so yeah, the discernment that you talked about, the next chapter is finding the happiness devoid of relationship so that I can enter into the relationship from a different space.
Then come visit.
Come visit. I'm planning on coming to visit.
I know you are.
I've
I
been I
know,
visited I
but you can
visited
come.
I came for
I know.
Thanksgiving, drove all the way down.
I'm just saying. Always nice to have you visit.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? The rapid fire, you got the
No,
mic.
I don't rapid fire so quickly.
Well, this has been really awesome, Ma. I know that it was outside your comfort zone, but how do you feel now?
My heart isn't racing as fast. And it's like, well, it's out there. Can't take it back now. So, you know, um,
Yeah, and my hope is more than anything, um, that this conversation helps people see what's possible. Again, like that's my biggest thing is
yeah,
is reminding
same
people
thing.
that this sort of relationship between us was not how, like, we didn't always have it. This is a new thing. And it's come through intention. It's come through working on ourselves. It's come through letting go of any expectations and attachments, and really trusting our own journeys. And I love you so much, and you inspire me by what you're doing, and being willing to constantly face your edges when so many other parents are just like set in their ways and so unwilling to look at themselves or question their beliefs. So thank you for exemplifying that for me, and for saying yes to doing this podcast.
Well, my goal, and I'm going to put it out there, is to live to at least 100 and have all of my faculties still. So I got to do this to stay young.
Yep. Well, you're doing a great job, Ma. And then for all of the deep divers who have taken the time to listen to us, mother and son, just have an open conversation. Thank you for being a part of this and holding space for that. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. And I hope that, if anything, you have listened to this and that it inspires you to take some sort of action in your life, in some of the relation. Might be with a sibling, it might be with your parents, but some form of action to move the needle in the direction that you would like it to go with your relationship with your parents. That would mean a lot to myself and probably my mom, to know that us doing this and having this conversation, that's not exactly our comfort zone. We haven't done this before, is creating a ripple of positive impact in other people's relationships with their family members. So thank you, Ma. Thank you, deep divers. Again, I want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Have a beautiful rest of your day.